Welcome to another Sunday, a June Sunday in lockdown. Here we are in a church building, and again, I know I keep repeating this, I can't wait for the day when our church buildings are open and we can be gathering together for worship and prayer and praise, and our churches can be much more functioning than they are currently. So here we are looking this morning at Luke's Gospel, a special story where Jesus embraces his destiny, talks about what he came to accomplish and to do, and for us to embrace that too, our own destiny in him, and to see where Jesus is pointing to when he addresses the crowd who've gathered in the synagogue for their Sabbath occasion. So I'm continuing to repeat the mantra that I've been saying for weeks now: end the lockdown, save lives, love one another. Believing as I do that that's the best way for us to emerge from this crisis in a way which saves the lives of the poorest people, particularly, not just in our country but across the planet, and allows us to flourish as human beings in the best possible way. This passage in Luke is an exciting story about Jesus fulfilling an Old Testament concept, as we'll see in a moment. It's Jesus reminding the Jewish crowd that life is more than simply a series of obediences to rules and regulations, but it's about the full flourishing of human endeavour, and it's about new starts, a chance to reorientate life, to begin again as a society and as individuals. So here are the words in Luke's Gospel, chapter 4 and verse 18 following. Jesus is talking on the Sabbath day, the Saturday, special holy day for Jews, in the synagogue, and he's reading from the Old Testament, and he's describing why he has come. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, Jesus says, because he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor, freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. This is a quote from the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, and it's a clear description of some of the things Jesus came to do about sight for the blind and release of the oppressed and so on. But the little phrase we're focusing on is at the end of the section I read: proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. Now, what does that mean? Is it just some sort of general statement about God wanting to bless people? No, it seems to be something far more specific than that. The year of the Lord's favour appears to be referring to the year of Jubilee, the year of release, described very fully in the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament, a year in which the Sabbath principle is modelled par excellence. So Sabbath, every 7 days on a Saturday, a break from work. Every 7 years, land lying fallow, and every 7 times 7, 49, in the 50th year, a year of Jubilee, a time to start again, a time when debts can be forgiven, slaves can be set free, land can be returned to the original owner, things can begin again for the economic development of the people of God in the Old Testament. Society can have a fresh start. People's terrible mistakes, bad choices, life decisions that have wrecked them and their families can have a chance to be recalibrated, to begin all over again, with debts forgiven, slavery ended, a chance for a new start. And Jesus says, I'm the Jubilee man, I'm the kingdom bringer, a chance for a fresh start for society and a fresh start for individuals. And we need to embrace that today, even in this time of containment, this Jubilee principle that Jesus longs to bring to us today. And this is not just a narrow focus, let's just get out of containment, let's just get the restaurants open, let's just get churches open. It's far greater than that. It's Jesus' appeal to the whole of life to be embraced in this flourishing, dynamic, freeing way, and not in this narrow, constricted way which legalism, as the Jews sometimes experienced it, brought to life, and as this containment brings obviously to our lives and to our society. And it's as if Jesus is reminding us that life is broad and rich and greater than simply the rules that we're currently undergoing. The place of science in all this is quite complicated, partly because Christians have had a bit of a bad rep as far as science is concerned historically. Sometimes we've been perceived as being obscurantist and negative and dismissing scientific claims, and that's been quite wrong. Science has been amazing for the world. Science and technology have produced wonderful benefits for the planet, and this should be acknowledged. But the danger, I think, in our current situation is believing that science really is the sum total of what we're looking to for our guidance. Science is a way of looking at reality, but it's only a partial way. There's art and culture and philosophy and theology. There are things like hope and forgiveness and grace and love, which can't be tested in the laboratory. They don't reveal their secrets to the scientific experimental process. And so we need a much more wide-eyed view of society. In fact, it's arguable that the narrow focus on so-called science has led us into some of the mess we're in. Let me try a crude, but I hope helpful analogy here as we continue to think about Jesus setting us free, the Jubilee man, an analogy about science. Science has got a very narrow focus, perhaps understandably at the beginning of something like a pandemic, but not appropriate now in its narrowness. Imagine you're out for a walk with a friend and you stumble down an embankment and tragically you break your leg. So awfully, the bones sticking out in your leg, it's horrific. And your friend wisely says, sit still, don't move, don't move. We'll get the ambulance here, we'll helicopter someone in, don't move. Now, that's the very best advice. Moving is going to make the thing worse. And then you notice that you're sitting on a railway line. And in the distance, the sound of an approaching train is coming. The train gets nearer and nearer and nearer. The wise advice about the broken leg is to stay still. But there's a bigger picture, and that is you'll soon be dead if you stay on the line. So the big picture says you should get off the track, despite the damage this is going to cause to your leg, because the big picture shows that there's another, even more urgent requirement at this point. Yes, it will damage the leg even more if you move, but that's preferable to the death which will inevitably result if you're hit by the train. We're in a bit of that situation now. Inevitably, if you stay, as the science seems to describe, locked away, safe from other people, the virus won't spread. But if, as I've been arguing for weeks now, the lockdown itself is actually taking more lives, more people will die here and overseas, then the bigger picture needs to be taken into consideration. And the narrow focus on the virus is actually going to destroy life rather than be an inhibitor of it. So we better face some difficult truths. And we need to face this personally, by the way, if we experience Jesus' Jubilee. There's a piece of bad news about the virus. It's pretty clear that the scientific views are going to be all over the place. Even this week, Professor Ferguson from Imperial College said in the week leading up to the lockdown, the virus was multiplying maybe 2 or 3 times. And if we'd done the lockdown a week earlier, we'd have saved lots of lives. At the same time, Professor Wood from Bristol University said that the virus was in retreat from 5 days before the lockdown began. Professor Ferguson's advice was all over the media because, of course, bad news plays well in the media. Professor Wood's comments largely unreported, but 2 equally significant scientific opinions both can't be right, opposite of each other. There's clear evidence that if the government had had a completely different set of scientists advising them, we'd have done completely different things in terms of this situation. We may have introduced social distancing, but we certainly wouldn't have done lockdown in the way that we have. And so science is great and we should affirm it, but it's limited in its ability to show us a picture of the whole world. We're not just a collection of atoms, a collection of beings fragile and vulnerable to viruses. We're far more than that. We're families. We're people with meaning and hope and love and the need for connectivity in our lives. We're far more than simply this random collection of things which a scientific experiment might be useful to have on, either individually or corporately. So here's Jesus encouraging flourishing. He's encouraging a newness and an openness. And he's really trying to say to people throughout the New Testament story and his ministry, there's some quite bad news, really, that the human condition is broken and flawed, and we need to be forgiven and cleansed. There's some bad news about the virus, isn't there, truth be told? We're not going to get a vaccine. Not anytime soon, anyway. We may get one in the end. We're going to have to live with this. There's going to be a spike of cases, not a second wave, but a spike of cases as lockdown eases, and there'll be another spike in the winter probably, and we're going to have to learn to live with this. That's not good news. I wish the good news was we're going to deal with this, it'll disappear on its own, and by the way, there'll be a virus a week on Wednesday. It's not going to happen. So we're going to live with this. We're going to make a decision based on that bad news. And some bad news about the human condition. The human condition is, as the Bible makes clear, that we are impotent to help ourselves. And that though there's good in us and we need to express that good, in the end we need God's help to be all that we can be. And so we need to be forgiven by his grace, cleansed, set free, and day by day, humble enough to realise that we haven't got all the answers, that we don't know as a society what's right, we don't know as individuals what's right. We desperately need God's help to accomplish this. That's the bad news. The good news is that Jesus, the Jubilee man, offers us as a society and individuals this Jubilee, this fresh start, this 50 years that Old Testament Jews were encouraged to enjoy of starting again. And lockdown gives us that amazing opportunity to start again, to rethink our lives and to reprioritise them. Some of us are already doing this because our lives have been so shaken up in the last few months that we've had to think, what matters to us? What's important? What beyond the material, the physical, really matters in our lives? And our prayer must be that more and more people in the world wake up to this Jubilee potential. This could be a chance for the world to have a fresh start, to think differently about the way we organise the economy so that it benefits more than the very few and benefits a lot of us. We can rethink how we spend our time, the place of family, the place of relationships, the place of community can all be reinvented, rethought through, because this could be a Jubilee moment for the world. Please God, may it be so. A Jubilee moment for me, for my wife, for my children and grandchildren, for my family, as we think about what really, really matters. Jesus says, the oppressed, the blind, the prisoners, here in these verses, they have my special attention. But for all of you, may this be a Jubilee year. May 2020 be remembered not simply for a virus or for a lockdown, but for a time when our communities and our world had the chance to recalibrate, to start again. And maybe today, as an individual watching this, you think you've made some very bad decisions in your life, not just in lockdown, but whenever. And it all feels like a huge burden upon you. Today, the Jubilee man comes to you and to me and says a new start is possible. A clean slate can happen. A new beginning could be ours as we embrace the life of Christ within us. So today, in the middle of all our confinement, let's pray for and model in our lives a fear-free existence, a commitment to be flourishing as human beings by the grace of God, that wider society will join us in a free and open, a compassionate society, a society that smells of the Jubilee Jesus and lives out its life in a fresh and a different and a wonderfully expressive and free way.